A few Fridays back, I had the privilege of meeting one of my musical heroes, Drake White. It was the smallest gig I've ever been to. Barely 300 people, 10 times smaller than the last time that I saw him. And as I stood there in that room, I couldn't help but think, at the height of his career, even here in the UK, he'd been playing to thousands. Major stages, major momentum. The trajectory that every artist dreams of. And then everything changed. A brain bleed, a collapse on stage, a diagnosis that could have ended everything. But what struck me most that Friday wasn't that he was lost. It was what he's building now. Because what I witnessed in that room, it wasn't a man chasing the height of his career. I saw a man building something deeper. Fireside conversations, community, connection with his audience. Purpose. And it made me think, if I'd been in that situation, would I have chased the dream again? Would I have been happy with my lot? Happy with still making music? Would I be fulfilled with playing to a scaled back audience, knowing what I'd had? But then it dawned on me, a setback as big as this, it would redefine who I was, and what I stood for, and what motivated me. And as I stood there, I reflected back on why I built the Modern Fatherhood Club. Because we're chasing something bigger too. Bigger income, bigger status, bigger impact. But fatherhood doesn't care about scale. Your kids, they don't care about what you have. They care about who you are. They care about your presence. And that 300-person room, it taught me something powerful about collapse, identity, resilience, and what really matters as men. And in today's episode, I'm going to try and unpack it. Not just Drake's story, but what it means for you. So welcome back. This is Answer Me This, part of the Fatherhood in Focus podcast. I'm Aidan, dad, host, and founder of the Modern Fatherhood Club. Every week, I ask you one uncomfortable question, not to shame you, but to sharpen you. It's about legacy, impact, and the man your kids actually see when you walk into the room. The world is happy for you to just cope. We're here to help you choose. Choose how you show up, how you lead, and how you love. Before we dive in, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast, hit subscribe on YouTube, and grab one of our free fatherhood resources at themodernfatherhoodclub.com. They're built to support you from those early, messy days right through to the years when they're shouting at you from across the room. All right, take a breath. This week's question, it's designed to test you. Let's get into it. So, what happens when success defines you? Let's rewind. Drake White wasn't some local pub act. He was signed to a major label, touring nationally, top 40 hits, opening for major names, momentum building. His debut album had charted strongly, radio play, industry buzz. And here's the thing about that phase of life. When everything is rising, you don't question it. Success becomes identity. You build up a series of experiences that shape the man you are. On that stage, it becomes who you are. It doesn't matter where you work or what you do. If you've worked hard at it and it has helped you create what you have, then that's going to have a major influence over who you become, what you value, and how you contribute. And if we're honest, this is where many of us find ourselves. We define ourselves by income, productivity, performance, our ability to provide, our home, our bank balance. even the social circles we find ourselves in. And the world and the people around you, they just reinforce it. But here's the dangerous question. If the stage disappears tomorrow, who are you? If the promotion doesn't come, who are you? If the performance drops, who are you? Because we don't ask these types of questions until something forces us to. The warning signs we ignore. Before the collapse, Drake had been diagnosed with an AVM, a vascular condition in the brain. He knew there was a risk. He'd had procedures. He was aware something wasn't right. But he kept performing. He was fighting for the stage he'd worked so hard to stand on. And I understand that desire to fight for what is yours. Because we're wired to push through. We're wired to work for everything we've worked so hard to achieve. We're focused on one thing and one thing only at this point. Progress. If I keep pushing, I'll be rewarded. And in the pursuit of progress, well, we override warning signs all the time. Fatigue, stress, anxiety, relationship strain, burnout. We tell ourselves, I'll deal with it later. Once this project finishes, once things calm down. But here's the truth. Things rarely calm down on their own. And the body keeps score. And once the body's had enough, it's going to kick like a mother and bring you down. So if you're listening right now, do you know that something isn't right? Are you carrying pressure silently? And do you feel disconnected, but you keep performing anyway? We ignore the whispers. We ignore them until they become something louder. But for many, that warning often comes too late. We've already pushed those we love away. We've already created a distance we can't close. We've already sacrificed so much that we can't come back without losing that thing we'd fought to keep alive. Well, then it happened. On stage, mid-performance, he collapsed. A hemorrhage, a stroke, a brain bleed. One moment performing, the next moment everything stops. Now pause. Imagine that. The thing that defines you, gone. Doctors telling you you might not walk properly again. You might not play again. You may never perform again. That's not a career setback. That's an identity collapse. That's your whole world collapsing in on you. That's where you suddenly have nothing left. Everything that defined the man you were to the outside world has gone. Everything you fought to keep, every bead of sweat, every setback on the route to success, it might have all been for nothing. And this is why I think this story is real for me as a modern dad. When I struggled after Max, I didn't collapse publicly. It was quietly. I retreated from the world. I kept myself to myself, got into work, delivered, and left for home. As dads, I think we're prone to collapse, but not physically. It's emotionally, mentally, relationally. We shut down, we withdraw, we become distant. That's all part of the process. We no longer long for the things we once enjoyed. We'd rather sit quietly in our own company, not at peace, but hoping that pain will pass. You don't need a stroke to experience a collapse. You just need prolonged pressure without support. Here's the part most people don't see. 30 days in hospital, loss of movement on one side, speech therapy, walking with a cane, relearning how to hold a guitar. Now, in that room of 300 people, Drake sang song after song. But then in the middle of the set, he paused. He drank it all in. He talked authentically. He then did something I hadn't expected. He asked for permission to fail live in front of the audience. Yes, he'd relearned to play the guitar. But he was asking for permission to make a mistake or two because he knew he'd have to struggle through that next song. And you could see it. As the lights dimmed and the audience took their seats, he picked his way through one of my eldest's favourite songs, The Coast is Clear. A song about living without limitation and without fear. A song about giving life a go. As he strummed, you could see the brain firing, but his hand on the neck of that guitar, it was working overtime to keep up. The pain was there for all to see. Here was a man, a dad, a performer, facing fear right there. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear that the audience might not connect. Think about that for a minute. This is a professional musician relearning how to form chords right in front of a live audience. This wasn't glamorous, not Instagram worthy. This is the hard work in plain sight. A man taking risk, small reps, small wins. On that journey, there will have been dark moments, moments of wanting to quit. But this is where the story shifts, because he didn't rebuild alone. His partner stood beside him, community supported him. And that's something we don't talk about enough. Recovery is not heroic. It's repetitive, it's humble, it's slow, and honestly speaking, it's mentally draining. You get up, not because you want to, but because you have to. Because they need to see the real you. And that's exactly how fatherhood growth works. There are no dramatic transformations. It's all about micro shifts, better conversations, 5 extra present minutes, 1 honest admission, 1 small boundary, 1 walk, 1 habit that helps you find the rhythm. That's how resilience is built. Fast forward, he's playing gigs. He's returned to where he belongs. But this time, something's different. The rooms here are smaller. The energy is deeper. There's less ego, more intention. The man still delivers an exceptional vocal performance, but it's almost like the mask has been dropped. He's there, standing in front of you, not just there to entertain, but there to bring a message of hope, a message of inspiration, a message of authenticity, love and warmth. A modern, masculine father and man, and that's what I saw that Friday. But I also saw something else. 300 people leaning in, listening differently, not just there for a show, there for connection. And I realised something standing in that room. Impact, it's not measured in scale, it's measured in depth. We think thousands equals success. But what if 300 fully present people is more powerful? And this is where we get trapped. We chase bigger salaries, bigger houses, bigger milestones. But fatherhood asks a different question. Are you present? Are you connected? Are you available? Because your kids don't need a bigger stage. They need dad in the room. And that's when pain becomes purpose. This is where Drake's story becomes bigger than music. Benefit for the brain, mental health, advocacy, fireside-style conversations, building community around struggle. Music became the vehicle, but the mission expanded. And that's what happens when you survive something. Your priorities refine. When you almost lose your life, you stop chasing applause. You start chasing meaning. You realize connection is bigger than the performance. Community is greater than the ego. Living aligned to your purpose is greater than momentum. And that is exactly why I built the Modern Fatherhood Club. Because we don't need more content. We need circles. We need conversation. We need somewhere to say, this is harder than I expected. And we need that space to say it without being judged, without being dismissed, without being told to man up. We need a space when life feels heavy, a place where we can unload, a space that helps us protect what matters most. Because movements don't start in arenas, they start in circles. Fatherhood changes everything. Becoming a father changes a man. Becoming a father after nearly dying, that reframes everything. I believe that when you've stared at mortality, the lens sharpens. You see what actually matters. Legacy, presence, time. And this is the part that we need to talk about more. What are we modeling to our kids? If we model burnout, they learn burnout. If we model emotional shutdown, they learn emotional suppression. If we model resilience built through connection, they learn strength properly. Your kids are watching how you handle pressure. They're watching how you respond when they make a mistake and when you make a mistake. They're watching everything, every step, every misstep. But importantly, how you recover and how in those moments of recovery you treat those that matter. That's legacy, not the income bracket. So let me speak directly to you. You don't need a brain bleed to change direction. You don't need a collapse to reset. You don't need to hit rock bottom to build differently. Ask yourself, what stage am I performing on right now? What warning signs am I ignoring? Who would catch me if I fell? Am I chasing scale or building depth? Am I performing strength or building resilience? Because here's what I've learned. Isolation is dangerous. Silence is dangerous. Suppressed pressure has got to leak somewhere. And the bravest thing you, as their dad, can do is step into community before you need saving. I keep coming back to that room. 300 people, small stage, big presence. And I realize something powerful. Sometimes purpose gets refined in those smaller spaces. Sometimes your mission gets clearer when the spotlight dims. Sometimes collapse, it doesn't end your story, it just clarifies it. And sometimes the most powerful movements don't look big from the outside, but they change lives on the inside. If you're a dad carrying more than you admit, if you're pushing through something silently, please don't wait for collapse. Speak to us. Reach out in the direct messages or comments. Join our community, because strength isn't standing alone on a stage. It's standing shoulder to shoulder with others who understand, who have your back. And that's what we're building. That's the mission. And that's why that 300-person room meant more than any arena ever could. I'm here because I lost sight of what mattered. And it almost cost me everything. But that moment taught me something that I'll never forget. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being aligned. I've made mistakes. I've missed moments. But I'm not letting them define who I am. I'm building a version of myself my kids can learn from, not just one that looks good on paper. Because your kids, well, they don't need a dad who has it all figured out. They need a dad who is willing to look in the mirror and keep becoming. And here's the truth. That's just the starting point. Because once you decide to show up differently, the next challenge is knowing how. How you support your partner, how you handle pressure, how you lead when you're running on empty. And that's exactly what we're going to keep on unpacking. Okay, so that's today's question done. You've just spent a few minutes doing what most of us avoid. Slowing down, being honest, and looking at how you're really showing up. And that matters. It matters more than you know. So remember, your kids, they don't need a perfect man. They need an honest one, a dad who's willing to reflect, reset, and lead from the front, even when he's tired, under pressure, or coping more than he'd like to admit. If this episode landed for you, subscribe to the podcast. Hit subscribe on YouTube so you don't miss any of our future episodes. And if you haven't yet, join us at themodernfatherhoodclub.com. The link is in the description. You're going to find our free resources, reflection questions, the ultimate new dad toolkit, and the new dad recharge course if you're ready to realign your energy and priorities. And you can find our upcoming details on the antenatal course that's for new and expecting dads. Look, I'm not perfect, you're not perfect, but we are committed to leading with confidence, strength, openness and heart. Committed to giving our kids the version of us that's present, not just productive. Thank you for listening. Thank you for reflecting and for doing the work. This is the Modern Fatherhood Club. This is Answer Me This, part of the Fatherhood in Focus podcast. Lead from the front and never underestimate the power that you have over who they become. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.